Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Scrubbed In Show. I hope you've all been keeping well. This week we have with us another interesting guest. We have with us Virginia, who is a pharmacist from the UK, but is now a senior medical copywriter in Germany working for a digital health company. She's worked as a medical copywriter, as a freelancer with loads of clients, and has more recently launched The Right Clinic, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. But massive pleasure having you on the show today, Virginia. How are you?
Welcome to the
I'm
show.
good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and it's so nice to meet you and
No.
be one of those people that does something different and
No,
kind of, doesn't follow the normal or traditional routes. So, you
no,
know,
sounds good. So we're interested by what you do. Medical copyright is becoming a very big thing now. It's been around forever, I'm sure, but I think a lot more people are becoming akin to it, understanding it, but they're still struggling to get into it. So what we want to do is we want to kind of share your journey, your story into copyright, but we want to take it to the beginning. So tell us about your kind of background as a pharmacist, where you were working, and kind of bring us up to speed to present day.
cool. So I'm going to start when I graduated from the UCL School of Pharmacy. So the School of
Mm.
Pharmacy used to be a freestanding independent university. And it was like the top pharmacy university. And I was like, yeah, I got in. It's so cool. I'm going to be a pharmacist. And then they merged with UCL. And I was like, oh, I didn't know UCL didn't have a pharmacy department.
Yeah.
But anyway, long story short, I graduated and then I did my training year in a pharmacy in Putney. And then the pharmacist there got me into travel health and running a vaccination clinic. And I loved it. And I was like, you know what? This is like a really great service. Not many people are doing it. Why don't we have a leaflet? Why don't we have like all of this like stuff to promote it? So I guess you could say that was the first time I created like copywriting sales material without even knowing it. And they went and printed like 4,000 copies of
Oh
this thing,
wow.
and they still have it in pharmacy today. And so this is like, I don't know, 7 years ago when I was in there. But then I worked in there like on and off for like 5 years, like literally just running the vaccination clinic, plus all of my regular pharmacist duties. And I also locumed all over London. And so that was about 7 years of my life. And it was your typical like 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. with barely a break in the middle. And when you had a quiet day, you were just like thankful. So things are a bit calmer. And so what happened is COVID. And then my husband actually looking to go abroad anyway. So he was in China for 2 years. So we did long distance and loads of traveling. And it was great. And then when he came back, we got married, and then he was like, actually, I want to go abroad again, but I want to go to a school that really like is really inclusive and respects diversity and all of this stuff. So I was like, you know what, let's go for it, and I'll figure it out. If I can't work as a pharmacist, then I'll find a job online or something. So we moved in 2020 to Germany, and then I was like, actually, it's really hard to find an alternative job. So I was working in the school, in his school, for about 6 to 7 months as a science teacher. So I was teaching
Oh
from like
wow.
grade 3 to grade 12. So that's like, I don't know, age 7 years old to like 22. And it was really fun for me because I was like, I was doing a lesson on the skin, and I was like, this is so useful. This is like so like, refreshing my memory. And I really enjoyed it. And I was also responsible for doing the COVID tests as well. And during that time, I was thinking, okay, this is like a countdown to me not having a job, because by the end of the school year, there's no reason for them to keep me because I was like an extra.
Yeah.
So, and they weren't going to continue doing COVID tests. So I was like, okay, I really need to do something. So during that time, I was online and I was trying to find clients on Upwork, which is like a freelance platform. And I also entered a competition with Abraham Pharmacist, which is a pharmacist channel for health. And so I won the competition to write scripts for Abraham the Pharmacist,
Oh, wow.
and I beat 900 other pharmacists, and I was just like, oh my God, this
Wow.
is insane. Like, how do I do this? And so I built up my portfolio of writing scripts, and he gave me like
What does that mean by writing scripts? Is it just copyright or?
so writing the YouTube video scripts that he would
Okay,
say.
fine.
So, but also promoting health. So in
Mm-hmm.
terms of copywriting, copywriting is basically promoting something. So you're either getting someone to buy something or take your advice or do a certain action.
Mm-hmm.
So by giving them information in a really easy to digest like form, then they're more likely to subscribe to your channel and follow you. And I liked his channel because he didn't take any sponsorships. And he'd also been on like BBC Radio, so I was like, okay,
Yeah.
so he's got a lot of authority already, so it's good to like have that experience. And I also worked with an online doctor called Dr. Felix, and I didn't know what rate to charge, so I ended up like charging a really, really tiny amount. I didn't realize
Yeah.
how cheap I was being. But the trade-off was that they would put my picture and my name and link
Okay.
to the GPHC register. So it would like boost their website authority on Google's ranking.
Yeah.
And then it was also, a way for me to be like, I'm a published person and I've written for a doctor and you can like trust what I'm doing. And so because I had like 70 pages on Dr. Felix's website with my name and face on it, and about 20 or 30 odd scripts, which got like loads of views. I think they got like over 1 million views altogether. And some of them like really popped off, and some of them are still really popular now. It just showed that I was able to do it. I was able to get into this career seriously as a writer and do it successfully from home, from anywhere in the world, which is
Was that the first time you kind of went into kind of copyright, creating content, writing articles for other people, and this was all purely remote during the COVID
purely remote during the pandemic. I couldn't work as a pharmacist in Germany because I can't speak German, and I was like, do I either invest time learning German or do I invest time becoming a writer, which is a more solid career? And something that's remote as well, because I wasn't sure how long we'd be in Germany if my husband doesn't like his job or we have issues or something like that, like with the property or with the location. So then I started to use keywords and SEO techniques and loads of research and applying to jobs on LinkedIn. And the recruiter found my profile and they were like, hey, I really think that you would do well with this agency. And at this point I was like, I've been rejected so many times and I don't understand why, because I have like such a massive portfolio. So I was just like, let's just go for it. And the job was at a medical communications agency, but I didn't know it was a medical communications agency at the time. I just thought, oh, it's just like a place that needs me to do what I've been doing this whole time, because they were really interested in me producing content for another online doctor, which I can now say was as the online doctor. So they didn't launch yet. So they were like, this is super top secret. You're not allowed to tell anyone. Because during COVID, everyone was like, oh my God, how do we get medicines to people if they don't want to come to a pharmacy? So everybody got their own online doctor. And when you get an online doctor, you need content. So that's why the kind of demand for medical writers and copywriters just like shot up, and it's still going up now because people are like, if we don't have an online presence, we don't exist.
And it makes sense, as in kind of a lot of things, especially healthcare, is moving digital. It's less pen and paper, it's less physical, and I like to think we're becoming a lot more commercial and kind of innovation. The one question I wanted to ask is, copyright seems like such a niche, and we'll kind of talk about it. Did you have a knack for writing, or was it something you developed as you did more and more? Because I know a lot of people may be interested, but maybe like me, you can barely string a sentence together. Tell us a bit about that.
I'm very privileged in the sense that I've studied up a master's degree. So all of the writing that I had done up to university was always checked and criticized and got feedback. And I think anybody who's done a medical degree can relate to that. And so the kind of add-on, if you like, to do copywriting or writing for promotional sales materials is basically to make your writing a bit more emotional and persuasive, and include certain elements such as, you need to grab people's attention. So what's the most interesting thing about what you have to say? How do you introduce a topic? And you'll have that at the top of the page, especially because you're not there to introduce the topic to the person physically. It's all being, it's all text. Or in other formats, it's pictures or video. But it's the same principle. You need something to catch their attention. Then you need to give them the information in lots of small pieces. And it has to be mobile friendly. So you're not going to be writing an essay. You're going to be writing loads of kind of broken up paragraphs, bullet points, headings. And then at the very end, or littered throughout your piece of writing, you're going to have to be including calls to action. So you're going to have to ask people to do stuff. And I think there's a little bit of a guilt to make people do things as a medical person, because you're like, I'm kind of giving you the advice and you make the choice. But when you're a copywriter, you have to make that choice for them, because you have a motive to make them do something. So like a typical example would be that I developed over time would be to say, a certain collection of advice, but then kind of steer them towards the particular set of words that you've highlighted on purpose, so that they can click on it and go to that thing, or click on a certain button, or offer a discount, or that kind of stuff. So you're kind of persuading them, and you're advertising benefits more than you are features, for example. And I actually bought a lot of copywriting books because I didn't feel like I knew enough, and I didn't feel like anybody was going to teach me. So I was thinking, if I want to take this seriously and get better at it, then I have to keep on top of my knowledge and follow other people that write. But then one of the kind of dangers of being online and reading other people's content is that it's unlikely that you're going to go and verify what you've just seen. But if you have books and other references, and other people have said that kind of thing, and you've actually practiced it and it's worked, then that's kind of the learning process that you have to go through. And then the foundation of all the writing is that you have to be really honest. And because you have a medical background, you can ascertain, can I say that this is actually proven? Do I have a reference for that? And I think that's really important. And that's what makes the difference between someone who has a medical background and someone who doesn't, because they'll say really wild statements like vitamin C is good for you. And I'm just like, it's just not enough. It's just not enough. It's not convincing. Or they'll say something is dangerous, and you're like, it's not quite the right language. You could say it's concerning maybe, but I think just lots of little tweaks like that. And of course, there are tools that you learn to use as well. Some people love and hate Grammarly, but I love it sometimes. And then also Hemingway app is so useful, because when you get a brief from a client and you've never seen a brief before, they'll be like, can you write it for a patient audience with a reading age of 10 years old? And you realize that all of these standards have existed for ages, and we naturally talk to our patients like that because we want them to understand the information that we're giving them. And I think that's why Hass and I feel so strongly about healthcare professionals being writers. And all of the work that I did for Dr. Felix, for example, the online doctor, was all written by people who don't have a medical background, or they were still students. And there were errors. So they did
I was going to say, would you be able to tell the difference between a copywriter that's a clinician or has a medical background as to someone that's out of kind of university and writing content?
Yeah, so you can definitely tell the difference. And I think I even experienced that with the junior writers that I kind of train at work or outside of work. And you'll see it in the structure of their writing. And sometimes they'll be unsure, so there'll be kind of like a hanging statement, or it won't quite be complete. But then on the other end of the spectrum, there are healthcare professionals who write such complicated content. And I have worked with with those types of writers as well, because, we'll ask them for a guest blog and they'll write something. But I don't know, a very small thing, for example, is they will write type 1 and type 2 diabetes, but using the letter I. So they'll write type I and type II.
Oh, I
And I'm
see.
just like, no, nobody's going to search for that on the internet. It's just,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think also just learning the standards as well. So there are standards for usability and accessibility online. And just discovering all of these things. And I think that's why we just packed everything into a course.
Yeah. No,
I
it
would just
makes sense.
if you really
When
want to learn, I can't tell you how to do it in 5 minutes. Here's the shortest amount of time I can do it in. And you can just work through it. So yeah.
Amazing. When, say you're given a brief by a company X, right? So, and they say, produce me some copyright on topic Y. What are some of the first few factors that you need to sort of decipher before even starting the project? How does a copywriter make a start on a project?
Oh, that is such a good question. Okay, so what I've learned from experience is that is such a common request to say, oh, can you just write this for me? There are so many questions to ask. So the first thing is, who is it for? So the audience is so important, because you need to know who you are talking to, and who's going to read your materials. So when people read what you write, they're essentially trying to talk in their own voice in their head, and that's what makes reading so memorable. And the second question would be, what kind of style or tone of voice would you like it to be written in? So, for example, do you want to be really kind of firm and convincing and authoritative? Or do you want to be really like friendly and like a big sister? So I've had that request before. So you'll be kind of, really, really casual and chatty. And sometimes it'll be quite, serious and empathetic. Or just really careful with what you say, because it might be a really sensitive topic. So audience and tone of voice are the two top things. And then the third thing, there are more things than three, but the third thing would be, what is the purpose of the content? So what do you want the reader to actually do? And how do you want your brand to be represented? So like what are your values, or what are typical phrases or things that you would typically say, so people can recognize that this is your brand speaking to them. And some brands will often not invest in having kind of specific brand messaging, and then you'll have to make that up, which makes the whole job a lot harder, because they you may not necessarily know the brand, and the brand that doesn't know itself means that it's going to be more hard work for you as a writer. And sometimes there can be just too many people that have different opinions on what they want the writing to be like. And then if you don't have a brief to point at the end, they'll say, oh, we don't like it, can you do it again? And that's like the worst situation. So yeah, that's what I would ask.
And typically, so having worked with a few copywriters, kind of when we kind of help health tech companies and whatnot, which is obviously still new for us, I know it's more than just spending half an hour writing something. How long does it typically take to kind of do the research, kind of do all the SEO ranking and the keywords to really produce a good quality piece? Because I know there's a lot of budding health tech entrepreneurs that are building companies, and they're going to get copywriters. So just kind of understanding it from your viewpoint.
So I would say there's definitely a learning curve. So the sooner you get to know the brand and who they target and what they sell in terms of, are they selling advice? Are they selling a particular product or service? And then what are the benefits and features of that product? Then, the more complex the product, the more difficult and the longer it will take to write about it. So I would say on average, if you're going to write an awesome blog piece, for example. So a blog would be what we call a piece of pillar content, because then you can chop it up and turn it into lots of smaller pieces of content. And they often tend to be what we call evergreen. So that means they'll stick around for a really long time. They're really core pieces of content. So I would say anywhere from 6 to 10 hours, and then probably another couple of hours to account for feedback. So if you've got a team of writers, then that makes everything quicker.
Yeah.
And generally you'll start with, you go through the brief, you'll ask questions about it, you go in, do some research, you write the first draft, you'll get feedback, you'll make edits, you get more feedback, make edits again, and then hopefully it's not more than 2 or 3 rounds. And so that whole process, because of the back and forth, is a good 6 to 10 hours. But if you know the brand and they're a regular client and they say, hey, we're writing a blog about product X, can you give us 2,000 words on this topic, how to use product X? And you know them because you've been working with them for, like, let's say 3 to 6 months. I'd say 6 months is about a good amount of time to work with a client to really know what they're like and write in their tone of voice. So I would say 2 to 4 hours. So you really like half time. The longer you stick with a brand. So that's why if you are freelancing, it's much more valuable to kind of learn about a client and then retain them for as long as possible. Because once you lose that client, you have to replace them. You start another learning curve. So
that makes sense. Yeah. Going back to your story so you initially did it for a company like Dr. Felix, YouTube scripts, then worked for this communication agency. And then after that, is it when you kind of thought, I'm a bit more confident, I'm going to set out on my own journey, on my own path, and do it as a freelance copyright, and go out and secure those clients? Tell us a bit about that phase and how you secured your first client. What tricks and tips do you have?
So I would say while I was working at the medical communications agency, I did have people approach me as clients, and then there were some that I approached myself. And kind of the quickest way to get to know someone is to read what they've put out there and then form an opinion on it. Would you want to associate yourself with that client? Do you agree with their kind of values and their brand and what they're doing? And then just send a cold DM or connect with them on LinkedIn, or send a proposal if you're on Upwork. So, I work with like a vitamins company through Upwork. I worked with a compressions hosiery company on Upwork, and a contraceptive pill company through LinkedIn.
Interesting,
and I just, I messaged the CEO. I said, I really like your article. I read it in Pharmacy Magazine. They said, oh yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. I'll put you in touch with my social media person. And I was like, okay, cool. That was really easy. I didn't even ask. She kind of just put it up in conversation. And then if you want to do something that's a bit more challenging, is getting into print published materials. So I really wanted to write Pharmacy Magazine, and it took me about 3 months to get the editor of another magazine to give me the email of the Pharmacy Magazine. And then it took me another 3 months to get an article to write, and then it finally got published. So last year I wrote 2 articles for Pharmacy Magazine, and they're like my pride and joy, because every month we would get the Pharmacy Magazine in the pharmacy, and I'm just like, this is so cool. I wish I was like printed. And now I am, and I'm just like, so cool. So I would say a lot of patience as well, because if you can't kind of get over being rejected or having the kind of willingness to just try again, you've literally got nothing to lose. Like, just go for it. The worst they could do is just say no and just move on to the next person. So there are so many opportunities out there, and you could literally choose what you want, and you just have to chase it. So it's the person that perseveres that gets the carrot at the end of the day. And so when a lot of people join the LinkedIn group for example, they'll say, "Oh, I've been trying for 2 or 3 months." I'll be like, "Keep going." Just like
Yeah.
3 months is like just, a drop in the ocean. Just keep
Yeah.
going. And sometimes you need a community of people who are all
Yeah.
trying together
Mm.
to kind of keep you going. And that's the power of community. I'm so like chuffed to have such a
Mm.
great LinkedIn community
Absolutely.
of people that are all, supporting everyone. So yeah.
Virginia, what's it like? So you've gone from pharmacy where you've had relative stability. You sort of, if you wanted a job, you could go get a locum shift wherever you liked, and it's pretty guaranteed. To freelancing, and then to obviously now assume full time again. But what was it like in that freelance period as a healthcare professional, going from complete sort of stability to having to actively find work?
Oh, it was really stressful. But I'm just one of those people that does not give up. So
Mm.
when I wasn't getting people, telling me that they're going to take me up on my offer, I was like, okay,
Mm.
well, I'll just spend this time learning to do something new, because every time you kind of focus on doing something new, that skill will always grow as long as you keep it
Yeah.
up. So I practiced making short videos, figuring out how to, add text on the screen, how to
Mm.
edit,
Mm.
and kind of every little thing that I learned, even figuring out how to get great audio, or publish things on YouTube, or just do TikToks and answer people's questions.
Yeah.
So every little thing that you learn, it might not feel relevant at the time,
Mm.
um, but you just have to keep going. Even if you feel like, I was really lucky that my husband was able to support both of us while I wasn't earning my, full potential income. Let's put it
Mm.
that way. So it was quite hard, and it was stressful, and I would have days where I would just be like, oh, I can't be bothered. Maybe I'll just be a housewife. But then I was like, I would get so bored.
Mm.
And that's not the future I saw for myself. I'm definitely very creative and entrepreneurial, and there are definitely a lot of failures that happened. So one was, I was sitting on a plane to Germany, and the
Mm.
person I was sitting next to was the son of the owner of this massive vitamins company. And they
Oh
said,
wow.
"Oh, can you like make content for us?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And so I figured out how to make long form video and edit it, and I got all of the awesome lighting gear and
Yeah.
audio and different mics, and I was like really trying to make it work. And then at the end, they were like quite rude, and I was like really, really hurt. And I was like, you know what? I've learned my lesson. I didn't have a contract. There was
Mm.
no solid
Mm.
agreement. They didn't like my edits for whatever reason, and they wanted all of my raw files so that they could do
Oh
whatever they
wow.
wanted with it. And I was
Yeah.
like, that's not why I agreed. And so I was just like, I'm just gonna let it go. I'm gonna let this, however many £1,000, I'm just gonna let it go.
Mm.
I'm gonna get a new computer. I'm gonna improve my editing skills. I'm gonna find someone who will appreciate me for what I can do.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, resilience, I would say, as well.
No.
It's really
De-
important.
Definitely. I think resilience, grit, that hustle ability is super important when you're a freelancer. It's kind of the thing that lets you kind of keep going, especially when like you don't know who your client is going to be, you're losing clients, you need to replace them. Do you feel medics, by virtue of being in like a system like the NHS, they kind of learn that and they're kind of more adept at copyright than other non-clinical background people entering the world of kind of freelancing copyright?
It's definitely true that we are more resilient, and sometimes you'll speak to a patient and try to give them so much advice, and
Yeah,
they just come back and they just haven't done anything with it, and they're
yeah.
in a worse state and that kind of thing. And it's not your fault, but you just have to keep going with trying to help them and doing your best. And I
Hmm.
think because we have that mindset of just always doing our best within our limits, although sometimes that can be to our detriment because of burnout. um, so you're quite prone to burnout if you get
Yeah.
into copywriting. And there's a lot of waiting around as well. So if you don't see your patient for a while, it's similar to not getting feedback on your writing for a while. And you feel like you put in a lot of effort when you write things, and you feel like it needs to be out there in the world and be seen by
Yeah.
and the people that you want to help. So I think there is an emotional connection. But one thing I would say is don't take feedback personally. It's definitely tough to get the first round of feedback on your
Yeah.
writing, and people have different opinions and different
Of course.
characters, and they won't have the same kind of caring mindset that you do,
Mm.
and they may not speak to you that way either. But it's not about you personally. It's always about them and the stresses that they have, to get what they need from you to fulfill whatever task that they're trying to
No.
complete.
Mm.
So pressure is very top down, and you tend to be bottom of the chain,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Well, for a while, until you start training other writers and getting into other processes. So yeah, so I would say
No.
we're built well for this, but
Yeah.
we can be a bit passionate.
No, I can imagine. The final question before we kind of move on to kind of the course and all the wonderful things you've doing since is, when it comes to freelancing, even not just copyright, video editing, photography, design, the issue that keeps cropping up its rear head is pricing. When
Oh,
you
yeah.
are a new copyright, how much do you charge? How much do you charge? And the reason why I'm saying is, I hate when people undersell themselves or they don't realize the value and the bringing to the table. We don't have any experience in copyright, of course, but what are your kind of general principles around it?
That's a good question. I do get the pricing question a lot, because at the end of the day, this is a career and you need to make
Of
a
course.
living. So I would say when you first start out, you'll probably want to be, you will lowball a little bit,
Yeah,
and
of course.
then kind of see how you can build up your portfolio. And then once you've got that kind of portfolio deck, then you can be a bit more demanding, because you can say, oh, I've written for a company like this, if you can say the brand, and what you did for them, and then also the achievements. So showing results means that you can charge more. So in terms of just starting out, I would say if you're working to a piece of writing of about 1,000 to 2,000 words, and you're estimating about 6 to 12 hours, then I would say you can charge anywhere from as low as 150 to as much as 600, depending on the detail that is required for that piece of writing, and also how much research you need to do, if you need to include citations and then have kind of proper referencing at the bottom of the piece of writing. And also if you need to do any SEO research, include any keywords, include any metadata, or include images as well. I have been asked to provide an image for the work that I do. And sometimes they'll just say, oh, hey, here's our catalog from Shutterstock or Pexels. Just pick a picture and then we'll buy it. But that still eats into your time, because if you've ever written anything and tried to find a picture for your article, you'll know it takes
it's the hardest bit.
Yeah, exactly. It could take you like 30 minutes to an hour if you can't find what you want. And I think you definitely have to really think about how much time you've got to dedicate to it, and then the result that you're promised at the end. So will it be published with your name on it, or is it ghostwriting? Is it something that they will repurpose into other things for their social media? So there's a lot of value from you doing that initial piece of work. And so they don't underestimate how much it will cost, especially if they want to put your name and face on it, and you have a medical background or you're on a medical register, because that will boost their EAT score, which is expertise, authority, and trust. And Google loves that, because it shows that you're kind of connected with a proper medical and health background person. And they're pushing things like YouTube Health, so more people are going to be looking for health related videos now. And if you've got that blog, that can be a script or a video. So I think you kind of need to think about all of the parallels that will come from that, and that's kind of the way you need to sell it as well, because they'll think, oh, you're just writing a blog for us, so it should be as cheap as possible, it's only going to take you 2 hours. It's not really the case, because somebody else is going to look at that piece and they're going to recreate it. So yeah, I would say charge as much as you can, but also respect that sometimes if it's a startup, they will be looking for a good deal, and if you just really like them, then you can go ahead and just build your portfolio through lots of cheap pieces like I did with
Yeah.
Dr. Felix. But it means that those pieces will be in your portfolio for years to come, and everything will build on top. So
No,
just go for it.
definitely.
Sometimes don't think about the price too much in the beginning. Just do the work, and then you can be a bit more demanding.
And I think that's a sensible way of doing it. Tell us a bit more about kind of the venture into courses, teaching other people, going from a position of doing it yourself to now helping and teaching other people. Where does that stem from? You know, you could have lived your best life. Why have the headache of teaching other people?
That's a really interesting way to phrase the question. I would say it's because I think that this is probably going to sound like really interesting, but basically, we have this kind of innate need to want to help people as healthcare professionals. And I felt that a lot of the information that was online was really out of date and not helpful for someone like me, who's like complete beginner, trying to switch careers, never written anything or thought about creating content online, didn't know what a H1 or H2 heading was. I just figured it out from kind of doing my own website. So I really got stuck in, and I think that it's so liberating for me to share that information freely. Whether people choose to pay for it or not, it's up to them. But I produce more free content than I produce paid content, and that's because I just really want to help people. And then it's just giving people that little bit of push that gives me so much like satisfaction, because they've got that skill for life and they can build on it, and it can really change their life. It can move their whole life in a different direction. And I think the thank yous are just so rewarding, whether they're free or they're paid. It doesn't make a difference to me. The fact is, you did the work, and you thought that you couldn't do something, and with a little bit of instruction, now you can. And that is just like, you can't put a price on that. That's totally priceless. And I'm always so humbled when people, read my work and they notice something that they read somewhere else and they correct me. And I'm just in a constant state of learning from them too. So, the best way to teach, as they say, the best way to learn is to teach other people, because they'll pick up on stuff. And through creating courses, people give me feedback, and they do it willingly. They spend a piece of their life learning something and viewing something that I've created. And then they're like, you know what, I should tell her about this because she can improve this and it will help other people. So it's kind of like this endless circle of feedback, of helping everyone. So everyone that provides feedback and I make a little improvement will help another person in future. And I definitely drive that point in courses as well. So I say, please, write your question in the Q&A publicly so all future students can see it. And it's also like a never-ending kind of stream of updated content as well, because new regulations will come out, new ways to say things or reference things will come out, and people talk to each other and find things out that way, because you can't keep on top of everything yourself. So if you've got a community that's constantly chatting about it, it also helps keep me up to date and keep everyone up to date. So it's more about community at the end of the day. Not really the physical act of teaching. It's more about just everyone kind of coming together to kind of be that single medical writer voice that goes, no, we're not accepting this standard as a medical writer. We're going to do it this way. And if everybody says the same thing, then it improves the standard for everyone. It's kind of like locum rates. If people start charging less, the price goes down. But people started to charge more, especially in the pandemic. The price just shot up. And as it should. I was just like, why weren't we getting paid this much before? Why was the price going down? So, it's more about trying to empower people to change their lives and also feel supported that they can do something that they thought they couldn't. And who doesn't want to work remotely and travel and, just improve their quality of life? I think that's just, it's been so life-changing for me, and I really want to kind of pass that on and keep that going. And I've even had people who are like, oh, I'm close to retirement, but I want to keep working and I can't really travel that much. so I want to get into medical writing. I'm like, of course you can. So, you know, or people with children, or they've taken a break from work, you know, for a few years to raise their kids. They're like, I'm not really ready to go to an office. I'd rather do stuff from home. There's lots of reasons to help people. And I think, yeah, the content that was available just wasn't accessible, and seemed a bit out of date.
What would you say are some common misconceptions when it comes to medical copywriting, and how have you gone about sort of dispelling that through your course and your Write Clinic?
One of the biggest myths is that it's easy. So the course provides a structure for you to practice. One of the biggest requests I get is feedback. So, you know, could you give me feedback on this article I've written, or could you give me feedback on this blog, or what do you think of this that I've published? And I could sit there and spend half an hour to an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, going through your blog or whichever. But I think that what I would say to you may not mean that much unless you have the context and background of what I'm really talking about. So it can be really time consuming to give feedback to someone who may not necessarily understand, you know, the concept of tone of voice, for example, or the concept of reading age. I would feel that, you know, it takes a lot of explanation. So yeah, I would say the fact that it might be easy, but it's definitely not the case. And then also on the other hand, that the fact that you can't learn how to do it, you definitely can. There are so many tips and techniques and tricks, and once you've got that structure in your mind, you can write anything. And it's the same thing, even down to I call it the nitty gritty. So even the number of words you use in a sentence, the number of words you use in a paragraph, the number of words or characters or numbers that you use in a headline. These are all things that have been kind of researched and done time and time again. And I'm going to call them the greats, or the people before us, that put out loads of content and figured out the best kind of structures. And you can kind of inherit that and also make it your own, because when you write, you will have your own style. You don't need to sound like someone else. And that's kind of what makes content interesting. So don't try to go by the book too much. Just kind of have that structure, but make it your own.
Absolutely.
So it can be learned. It will take some hard work and practice, but it's definitely something that you can build up over time and get better at, and better and better at. And the more you practice different techniques, the more they'll become second nature. And yeah, sometimes you just need a little bit of feedback to make sure you're on the right path.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
That was quite interesting. But what it seems like is you've built this nice community around yourself, and probably because you're so willing to help other people. And I do agree with you, copyright is one of those life-changing skills. It really is, because it means not only is it one facet, it's location of where you work, the earning potential, kind of giving you that freedom, which so many people are yearning for right now. So the last thing I think would be nice to end on is tell us a bit more about Write Clinic. What can people expect? We'll plug it. We'll obviously leave a link in the descriptions, but tell us what is Write Clinic and what can they expect.
So Write Clinic is a medical writing academy where healthcare professionals and people with a science background can learn how to become a medical writer. So whether that's a medical copywriter and writing promotional and sales materials, or they want to go more into kind of regulatory writing, but laws and regulations do apply to copywriting as well. So you will learn that too. You'll also learn how to build your own portfolio, to find clients, to manage your finances, and also manage your well-being as well, because I think that gets overlooked a lot. And we really kind of really champion self-care and looking after yourself, because it is definitely stressful to do something new. And we also champion community a lot as well. So we mark your work, we give you feedback, We also answer any questions that you may have, and we answer them in detail and in a timely manner. So if you ask a question, we're not going to leave it for like 4 weeks. We'll get to it like in 1 or 2 days. And I've definitely built up that reputation in previous courses that I've created outside of Right Clinic. And yeah, also just really friendly support and the opportunity to join our medical writer directory as well. So you'll actually be listed with your LinkedIn profile, your portfolio, and your website, which we teach you how to do in the Right Clinic courses. And that means it's a place where recruiters, employers, clients, and also other medical writers who want to collaborate with you are able to find you. Because not a lot of people think to go and ask other writers to see if they want to work on something together. So we really champion community in that way as well, because sometimes writing something with someone can help you learn how to become a better writer as well. So
No, definitely.
yeah, there's loads to learn, and it's in lots of bite-sized kind of nano lessons, and yeah, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And we're really approachable. So me and Has are around like all the time. It's probably an unhealthy amount. So please reach out to us, and we're more than happy to help you get started.
For sure. I had a look at it before. Obviously, you sent me the link earlier. What I like about it, and you mentioned it, was it's not just how to be a good copywriter, how to get in. It's holistic. It's the well-being, the mental health, the portfolio. Like you literally did a course on everything that has anything to do with copyright, which is a very good way of approaching it. Because I know people kind of want to sell 1 or 2 things, but yeah, I'm excited to kind of dig into it, kind of learn a bit more. Like you said, it's always nice to learn new things. But no, thank you for taking the time out, Virginia. I know you're super busy, but it's been a pleasure having you on the show. And anyone that is keen on copyright, even before you commit to the course, Virginia and Hass have loads of content on LinkedIn. Like you're always sharing tips. You know, Hass is just on it. Like he's always showing so much stuff, and I'm learning so much from him. So it's incredible what you guys are doing. It's much needed in the medical community. I will say that for sure.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and all of your really kind words and compliments, and also just being really encouraging as well. I think I really appreciate that, because it doesn't matter how much experience you have, you'll still have doubts, but you just have to keep going, and everyone around you kind of keeps you going. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you, Virginia, and thank you to our listeners. We'll see you all next week.